Welcome back to the channel. Today's video will dive into critical updates, including assassination threats against former President Trump, heightened U.S. missile deployments in the Philippines, and rising tensions between Israel and Hezbollah. We'll also cover updates from the CDC on obesity rates, a massive liquidation of Alex Jones's assets, and more. Let's jump right in. Assassination threats against Donald Trump by Iran. Yesterday, Donald Trump was briefed by U.S. intelligence officials about growing threats from Iran to assassinate him. According to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, these threats are part of an effort by Iran to destabilize the U.S. Trump's campaign spokesman Stephen Chung stated that law enforcement officials across all agencies are working to ensure Trump's protection. Trump himself addressed these threats, warning Iran that the entire U.S. military is watching and waiting. These recent threats seem to be tied to growing tensions following Trump's 2020 order to kill Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Recent months have seen a rise in assassination plots, including the arrest of a Pakistani national linked to Iran. Just this past August, the Senate unanimously passed the Enhanced Presidential Security Act, which increases the level of Secret Service protection for Trump and other high-ranking officials. These threats come at a critical time, as Trump continues his 2024 presidential campaign. U.S. missile system remains in the Philippines. The United States and the Philippines have agreed to keep a U.S. mid-range missile system deployed in the northern Philippines, despite earlier claims that it was only temporary. The Typhoon missile system, initially brought in for joint combat drills, is now staying indefinitely. This decision has raised significant concern from China, with Beijing accusing the U.S. of escalating tensions in the region. China views the missile system as a direct threat to its national security, given its proximity to Chinese borders. Chinese state media and officials have criticized the move, warning it could lead to further U.S. deployments in South Korea and Japan. However, the Philippines has pushed back on China's objections. Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro Jr. called China's concerns reverse psychology, insisting that the missile system is a defensive measure. Tensions between the U.S. and China have been intensifying, especially after China recently tested an intercontinental ballistic missile in the Pacific Ocean, the first such test in over 40 years. China's ICBM test sends strategic message. China successfully launched an intercontinental ballistic missile, ICBM, into the Pacific Ocean last Wednesday, signaling its growing military capabilities. According to China's defense ministry, this launch was a routine test, but analysts believe it's a show of strength as tensions between China and the U.S. continue to rise. The Pentagon was notified in advance, and officials called it a step in the right direction to reduce risks of misperception. The ICBM test is part of China's efforts to modernize its nuclear arsenal. China's state media reported that the test effectively demonstrated the performance of its weapons. The Pentagon has expressed concern about China's expanding nuclear capabilities, noting that Beijing's warhead count could exceed 1,000 by 2030. China maintains a no-first-use policy on nuclear weapons, but its recent military advancements are seen as a strategic counter to the U.S. missile defense system. While tensions remain high, the U.S. has continued to push for diplomatic engagement on these nuclear issues. Israeli army prepares for potential ground invasion of Lebanon. The Israeli military is preparing for a possible ground operation in Lebanon as its conflict with Hezbollah intensifies. Israeli Army Chief Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi addressed troops on the northern border, explaining that airstrikes on Hezbollah positions are intended to degrade the group's capabilities ahead of a potential ground invasion. This comes after Hezbollah launched missile strikes targeting Tel Aviv, which Israel quickly responded to with a new wave of airstrikes. Over 600 people have died in Lebanon in the past week, making it the deadliest period since 2006. The ongoing border conflict began shortly after Hamas's attack on Israel in October, with Hezbollah launching frequent strikes in support of Hamas. Israeli military resources are now being diverted to the northern border, where tensions with Hezbollah continue to escalate. Israel has also called up reserve brigades and moved troops from Gaza, indicating that a ground operation could be imminent if the conflict worsens. CDC reports rise in severe obesity rates in the U.S. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has released a report highlighting that while overall obesity rates in the U.S. have stabilized at around 40.3%, the rate of severe obesity is still rising. Severe obesity, defined as a body mass index, BMI of 40 or higher, has increased from 7.7% in 2013 to 9.7% by 2023. The CDC's data shows that women, particularly those aged 20-59, are more affected by severe obesity than men. The report also raises concerns about the long-term effects of severe obesity, including an increased risk of heart disease, diabetes, and certain cancers. The CDC's Healthy People 2030 initiative aims to reduce the overall obesity rate, but it acknowledges that addressing severe obesity remains a significant challenge. Alex Jones's InfoWars business to be auctioned off. In a major legal development, a Texas bankruptcy judge has ordered the auction of Alex Jones's InfoWars business to help pay the $1.5 billion in damages awarded to families of the 2012 Sandy Hook elementary school shooting victims. Jones spread false claims that the shooting was a hoax, leading to lawsuits from the families. InfoWars assets, including social media accounts, trademarks, and studio equipment, will be auctioned off starting in November. Jones filed for bankruptcy in 2022 after losing multiple defamation lawsuits. Despite the liquidation of his business, Jones has vowed to continue broadcasting, possibly through a new platform. Georgia Election Board mandates hand-counting ballots. Just weeks before Election Day, the Georgia Election Board has passed a new rule requiring ballots to be hand-counted in addition to machine counting. The 3-2 decision has sparked concern among election officials who argue that the last-minute change will be costly and time-consuming. Critics, including Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, say the rule may not withstand legal challenges. Proponents of the rule argue that accuracy is more important than speed in election results, with one board member stating that an extra hour of counting is worth it to avoid potential legal battles. The new rule comes amid growing debates over election security and transparency in Georgia. That's all for today's news. Be sure to like and subscribe for more updates on these ongoing stories. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next recap.